Good morning, pipe smokers. Prairie Piper here, Saturday morning on another smoky day here in Manitoba, at least out in the Interlake. But it's that time of the year we've had a real bad year for forest fires. Been thinking about this video for a while, and we're gonna pull the trigger on it today. Hopefully there's not too much noise. It's pretty quiet in the neighborhood right now, but I mean, the neighborhood could awaken at any given moment. If that happens, maybe I'll close the garage, but we're just going to start recording now and see what happens. This video is going to be about how to taste pipe tobacco. It's very similar to cigars, but I'm not going to get into that. So it's pipe tobacco and how to taste it. It's going to be a deep dive. It's going to be thorough. I got some notes here. Could be a half-hour video. I don't know. But so we'll get into it and see where we go here. My morning coffee. Okay. How to taste tobacco. So before you even decide on the tobacco that you want to try or smoke, or you select your pipe, you're going to want to consider two things. You're going to want to consider the environment that you're going to smoke in and what you last had to eat. Okay? I should mention these are not the steps that I go through every single time that I smoke. There's a lot of steps here. There's a lot we're going to discuss. I don't do this every single time I'm going to smoke. But I do it if there's a new blend I want to try or a tobacco that I really, really kind of want to get a handle on. Okay? So environment and what you last ate. Okay, so the environment, you generally don't want to be, trying to taste a newer tobacco or get a handle on tobacco out in the wind, in the rain, or in the cold, or in extreme heat. You also don't want to smoke, say, in a corner where you're sitting beside a gas can. I mean, aside from the obvious, you're going to get fumes. Maybe you got a diesel can sitting on the other side of the garage. If you're sitting in the garage with no wind flowing through, no airflow rather, you're going to smell that, right? Or anything else that's going to smell where you are, right? You might be, there might be no breeze. You might be sitting outside and you want to taste this new tobacco, but you're sitting beside a flower bed. You're going to get that pollen. You're going to get all that flower incense, right? So that is all, your environment is going to negatively affect your sense of taste and smell for that tobacco, right? So that's kind of why you want to consider the environment, right? Hold on here. What you're generally looking for is just an area of the house or an area of the garage or wherever it is you generally smoke, where there's just sort of an exchange of air. So you don't want to smoke a pipe in your car. Again, this is specifically for you wanting to try something new or taste the tobacco. Smoking in your car or smoking in a real small room, even if it is in the house, right, where you're kind of hotboxing and that smoke is not dissipating and it's sitting around you, that's also going to affect your ability to properly taste just the tobacco components. So the environment is important. Number two is what you last ate, right? So you generally don't want to, try new tobacco after, a big curry dinner or, hot and spicy wings with a few beers, right? These are things that are gonna put your taste buds, your tongue and your mouth in overdrive, right? When you have those hot spices, or just, it doesn't have to be hot, but really, really spicy foods are really gonna numb your senses. Your sense of taste and your sense of smell. Okay. Now, having said that, there are some, you can par really nice heavy English with something like if you have a curry dinner or roast beef and gravy and mashed potatoes. But I'm not going to talk about parring, in this video. So some pipe smokers like to have a heavy dinner and then a smoke afterwards. But we're just talking about the ability to taste tobacco. Okay. So on that note, you can cleanse your palate. You generally want to cleanse your palate if you're trying a smoke for the first time, a new tobacco rather, not smoke. tea, coffee, champagne, and soda water. These are those are a few palate cleansers so that you can, you know, cleanse the palate, neutralize the palate. Essentially, right, when you're going in to taste something for the first time, whether it's wine or whether it's whiskey or whatnot, or whether it's pipe tobacco, you want a neutral palate. So tea, coffee, champagne, and soda water will help neutralize some of the flavors in your mouth, and you can kind of go into tasting tobacco with a neutral palate. So environment, what you last ate, and a clean palate, a neutral palate. Those are kind of the things that you're looking for before you even consider what you're going to smoke. But I'm going to light it up here again. Okay. So let's select the pipe that we want to use to taste our tobacco in. Will just any pipe work? No. Could you put it in a cob? You could. Cobs are generally fairly neutral, but you are going to get a little bit of sweetness, potentially tainting the taste of the tobacco, because corn is sweet, and this is made of corn. So you don't necessarily want to use a cob. What about a Savinelli pipe, a briar? You don't want to use briar either. Briar ghosts. So you're not going, if you want to taste the tobacco for the first time, the neutral tobacco, the virgin tobacco, and you really want to get a handle on it, you're going to get ghosting from whatever you've previously smoked. This is my Burley pipe. And I've got a Latakian, an English blend. I got an English pipe, Virginia Perique pipe, and then just a straight Virginia pipe. And this is my Burley pipe. So briar ghosts, right? So you're going to get all these other flavors tainting the taste of this new tobacco that you want to try and get a handle on. Now, some people like that, right? Some people like a nice seasoned pipe like this. You know, I do, where I've only smoked certain types of blends in it, and it enhances the smoke. If that's, it can enhance it. I'm not going to get into maybe we'll do another video on like a well-seasoned pipe, and a good carbonized bowl. I shouldn't say carbonized. A good char buildup is what I was referring to. But we're just tasting tobacco here. So the briar pipe's not going to work because of ghosting. What about Meerschaum? They don't ghost. It's generally true. Probably a better option than the cob, but Meerschaum is porous, and it's possible you might get some residual flavors. I've never kind of experienced that, but then again, I've never really studied it, but just be aware of that. By all accounts, and I say by all accounts, Russ Ouellette, Jeremy Reeves, GL Peace, many of these guys, when they're, Shane Ireland on smoking pipes, there's a reason you see all of them when they're sampling tobacco use a clay pipe. The reason for that, there's no ghosting in here, there's no sweetness in here, there's no residual flavors. It's a neutral tool to taste your tobacco, right? Much like you want the neutral palate and to be in a neutral environment, you want a neutral tool to taste your tobacco. Okay? So it's the clay pipe. Okay. So we've let's say you've selected your pipe, I'm sorry, the tobacco that you want. I don't want to get into the tobacco. I mean, certain cuts of tobacco will taste different. Like I'm smoking Haunted Bookshop right now, you could probably guess. There's Haunted Bookshop Ribbon and there's Haunted Bookshop Cake. Do they taste differently? Yes, but in plugs and flakes can taste, same, you could have the same blend, but one's a plug and one's ribbon cut. They will taste different, but we're not going to get into that. So you've selected your tobacco you want to smoke. We've got the clay pipe. We got a neutral environment. We've got a clean palate, and maybe you have some coffee with you. Clean the palate, and now we're ready to light up the bowl. Well, we're almost ready to light up the bowl. We want to taste our tobacco. That's what this video is about. You need to understand. So there's taste and there's flavor, and they are not the same thing. Taste and flavor are not the same thing. Okay? So your taste buds your taste buds only taste 5 concepts: sweetness, saltiness, sourness, bitterness, and something called, it's a Japanese word, something called umami. And the best that I could find, that it's hard to, umami is its own flavor, and it's been associated with like soy sauce, fish sauces, so it's its own flavor. So that's it. That's what your tongue is tasting. The tongue and the back of your mouth. That's taste. Sweetness, saltiness, bitterness. Sweetness, sourness, saltiness, bitterness, umami. That's what you taste, okay? That's taste. And that's your tongue and your mouth. And then there's flavor, right? Taste and flavor, not the same thing. Those are the 5 taste buds. Flavor is composed of, it includes the taste, but it also includes your sense of smell and the texture of the smoke, and even visually what you're tasting or smoking. So taste is sweetness, sourness, saltiness, bitterness, umami. Flavor is your experience of tasting. Okay? Flavor is your experience of tasting, which is made up of smelling it, looking at it, and the way that it tastes in your mouth. Is it smooth? Is it velvety? Is it rough, rustic? Is it hot, cold, right? So, that's one of the things when you hear, right, because flavor is the experience of tasting, right? That's why, to one pipe smoke, you might say, wow, this is really, really sweet and rich, like caramel. And someone else says, yeah, okay, it's sweet, but it's not that sweet to me. I'm getting like a molasses, right? Or I'm getting shoe leather, and someone else is getting, hay-like lemons, right? So these things change, right? And then it's your vocabulary, your ability to kind of describe what you're tasting. But that's flavor is your experience of tasting. Okay. Before we move on, we'll then discuss, so we've got tasting, we've got flavor, and then part of all this is your nasal cavity. Half of being able to experience taste, and it is part of taste, is smelling, right? So I don't know what the percentage is, but it's very high. I mean, I would say your nasal cavity probably is responsible for 50% of your ability to taste. When describing what you're eating or what you're smoking, right? And we all know that example from when you got a bad head cold, you can't taste shit, right? You eat a lot less food when you got a bad head cold because you can't smell anything. It doesn't taste good, right? tasting tobacco is the same, right? Without your ability to smell, if you plug your nose and smoke, you're not going to get very much at all. Now, and that's not including retrohaling. And some people don't like to inhale, and that's fine. I'm not here to tell you, like, if you don't retrohale or breathe through your nose, you're not doing it right. But I will tell you, you are losing a massive amount of flavor and experiencing by not retrohaling, right? If you consider the mouth is 50% and smelling, your nose is the other 50% to tasting and experiencing flavor, I mean, you're missing half the experience. So just as long as you're aware of that. We'll get into retrohaling a little bit later, but that's important for you to know, right? Taste, flavor, mouth, and nose, right? Okay, so now that we kind of know all those things, like I said, I'm not going to light up the clay. I don't need to. I'm just kind of explaining things here. So as we light up a Zippo, which I like to use, not all the time. A lighter can also affect your experience when tasting tobacco. Because of the fluid, you can smell the butane. When I put this over, I can smell the butane. Now, it dissipates real quick, but some people don't like that. So some people will use matches. Well, some people say, well, the, what is it? When you strike the match and, let it burn off for a second or two because it's got that really, chemical, smell. Some guys don't want to use lighters to test new tobacco out. Well, I should say not lighters. I should say specifically a Zippo because of the lighter fluid in it, and you can smell it. Matches, again, let the match burn down first, right? Because that first pop, that ignition kind of releases that chemical or gas off of that ignites the match, right? But usually wooden matches, usually wooden matches will give you a neutral flavor, or even just a Bic lighter too, right? Okay, so we got the environment, we've got what we've eaten before, we know how to neutralize our palate. We know the 5 different tastes. We know that taste and flavor are different, right? That flavor is the experience of the taste. We know a lot of those flavors come from our mouth, our tongue, the back of our tongue actually, the back of our mouth. And a lot of those come from our ability to smell. Now, what we have to understand now is how the tobacco burns in the pipe. Okay. So once we get a good char going, right? We've done initial few lights. We've been smoking for 5 or 10 minutes. We got the embers burning nice and cool, nice and consistent. You have to understand that heat is the enemy of flavor, okay? Which is why you're supposed to sip on your pipe to pull in those flavors, right? I'm sure I've talked about this in previous videos. Just as you sip, you can pull, in my pipe tobacco reviews, as you sip, you can pull more flavor out because you're not creating a lot of heat in the bowl. So one of the major reasons you don't want a hot pipe is not only because, in the early days of a pipe, a newer pipe, you might burn it out. But primarily it's so that you can taste the tobacco, because the hotter this bowl runs, the less you're going to taste. Now, some blends are more forgiving than others. I mean, you can kind of, this Haunted Bookshop, you can chug on a Burley, chug on a Dark Fired, or even an English blend, much more than you can say something with like a Virginia Perique or especially a straight Virginia. So it's not to avoid, just to avoid tongue bite, right? While you want it like a nice, slow burning, consistently burning ember in the bowl, it's for taste as well, okay? So let's talk about what's happening in the bowl when you're smoking, okay? I forgot a prop. I'm gonna use this prop. Give me a sec here. Okay. Our pipe is now burning. But what's happening inside this chamber? Right? So this is a chunk of coal I'm going to be barbecuing later. So picture this as your ember, okay? It's burning nice and slow, consistent and evenly, okay? And this is, see if this is going to work. I know it's a big chunk. So picture that ember inside your pipe in the chamber. It's red, it's hot, obviously. What you're tasting when you're smoking a pipe is not the embers burning the tobacco. Okay, so this is our ember, these are the embers inside the bowl. When you draw on your pipe and you pull that smoke through, you're not smoking the embers that are burning the tobacco. Okay? What you're tasting is the tobacco that's surrounding the ember and underneath it. So the tobacco that's underneath here, burning in your pipe, this is the ember, okay? As you pull, as you take a draw, it's toasting and lightly burning the tobacco around the ember and below it. That's what you're tasting. You're tasting the toasted tobacco around your burning ember. So you can see that the hotter your embers are, the hotter your bowl is, the more tobacco you're burning. But you're burning it at a rate that's not going to give you flavor. So try to imagine that as you're smoking your bowl. You just, the embers inside your chamber are just lightly toasting the tobacco around, and the tobacco underneath, that's the smoke that you're pulling, and that's your taste. That's what you're tasting. And it's important to know that. And to kind of visualize that as you're smoking your pipe, especially for, you know, new people out there. That's just about it. And like I said, you know, sipping and getting a consistent burning ember is really what you're looking for. Kind of consider it similar to, you know, cooking meat on an open fire, or especially roasting marshmallows, right? You don't get a big giant flame and then throw your hot dogs or your sausages on, right? You don't jam a marshmallow in a fire pit that's got a giant flame. What do? You wait for the fire to die down, And after a few hours, you just have all those red embers, right? Burning in the bottom of the fire pit. It's glowing. It's hot. And if you get too close to it, you're going to burn your meat or you're going to burn your marshmallow. But at a certain height, you get a perfect, consistent, hot heat. You get a perfect cook. That's kind of, so visualize that when you're smoking your pipe and the embers in here, right? Kind of like I said, like when you're perfect marshmallow roasting is that dying fire at the end of the night where all that's left is just hot, burning embers. That's what's happening in your pipe. And that's kind of the consistent heat that you want, lightly toasting those tobaccos so that you can taste it. Okay? Okay, I think that's just about it. The last thing I want to touch on, I don't know how this is going to turn out because it's very difficult to teach retrohaling, but I wanted to circle back on this because it's half of your ability to taste the flavor of the tobacco is retrohaling. And retrohaling is essentially, I don't blow, if you watch my videos, I don't blow all the smoke out of my nose. I do a little bit to get the flavor. So I'll try to demonstrate how this is done. I don't know how it's going to turn out because it's hard to explain. There's probably other videos you can go look up to, you know. So what I do is bring in the smoke. Breathe in. I actually just inhaled it like a cigarette. Yeah, I'm not very good at articulating how to retrohale. So maybe we'll just leave it at that. I basically bring the smoke in and then just blow it out my nose. Right, your throat and your nose are connected. So anyways, I'm not gonna bother trying to explain that. I think I already butchered it. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Hopefully, you know, the next time that you want to try new tobacco or you really want to get into blending, you really want to drill down on you know, different blends of tobacco and tasting them for really like what they are through a virgin pipe like a clay. What you can also do, you know, is just get individual components, right? Just smoke burley on its own. Just smoke Perique on its own. Just smoke like a Virginia on its own, or just smoke dark fired. Now, it's not going to taste that great. Some guys like, you know, as those heavier blends. Some people smoke those, smoke straight Perique. Maybe not Perique, dark fired. I heard guys smoking straight dark fired. But smoking those individual components on their own in a clay, with the knowledge that I've given you, and there's other great videos out there too about tasting tobacco, you know, will really give you a handle on picking out the individual components when they're all combined together. Okay. All right, 28 minutes, kept this under a half hour, which is pretty decent, I guess. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for some other things coming up in the very near future. On my channel. I think they're going to be pretty cool. I think you'll enjoy them. I'm going to try and take a trip out to Thomas Hines and do some videos there. I show you the shop. I'm on holidays soon, so that's kind of when I'm going to do it. Anyways, enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Prairie Piper out.